I'm sorry, back into closed section. Can I do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I can have Kylie lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, justice for all. Again, let the record reflect that Miss Leland and Alicia Cruz are not in attendance tonight. Announcements of action taken in closed session. Information, Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. Information was received. And communications and celebration. Superintendent Gillen.
Thank you, President Menke. We have a couple celebrations this evening. The first one, I want to recognize and thank Central Valley Foundation for awarding a grant in the amount of $599,634 over a 3-year period. This is a wonderful acquisition for our district. It will support our English learner programs. And it's a 3-year grant, as I mentioned, but we also anticipate that the local control funding formula through supplemental funding will sustain this program throughout the duration of our work. It will provide an additional TOSA to work with our English learners at programs specifically at Elkhorn, Riverbank, and Westfield, but we want to expand this program to other schools throughout the district, so we're real excited about that. It'll provide collaboration time for our teachers, release time for doing their work, of course, but it also allows us to participate with the CVE group through the data network, which will hook us up with other resources throughout the region for this important work to support our English learners. So we're very pleased and appreciative of Julie Hoskins and her work to bring this home for us. Second celebration I want to mention, we received a generous donation from Wells Fargo to the tune of $130 for Bridgeway Island. I want to thank Wells Fargo. Those are our celebrations.
Thank you, Dr. Gilland. On to student association reports, student board member report.
Hello, everyone. At one of our elementary campuses, Elkhorn Village, they raised over $2,000 for Pennies for Patients to support the Leukemia and Lymphoma Societies. Over 30 students attended the River City High School Science Day on March 8th and enjoyed building and launching rockets, assembling a human skeleton, and making slime. The students who attended the event look forward to this being an annual event with even more participation by junior high students in the district. Elkhorn has a junior high MESA competition at Sacs Day on March 29th and an elementary MESA Day that will be coming up at Matsuyama Elementary School on April 26th as well. Over at our high school is our midterm finals week, and students have finished the first half of their finals today by completing the tests for their first and second period classes. Hopefully they are not too worn out to take on the last set of finals tomorrow for their third and fourth periods. Our next food day was originally scheduled for April 11th, but due to the fact that our leadership class did not realize it was a minimum day, we have rescheduled it to April 10th. The Western Association of School and Colleges, or better known as WASC, will also be giving our campus a visit on April 3rd. This will be a one-day checkup just to make sure our students are at the educational levels they need to be at in order to be successful in college. Inspirational speaker Kevin Bracey, who visited our campus a few weeks ago, has convinced 400 of our students to sign up for his training program known as Each One Reach One. This training will be such a good experience for our students because it will empower them to take a stand on their campus by preventing bullying and standing up for themselves as well. This training is also very beneficial to students who may be bullies themselves and can hopefully make them realize that there are better choices they can make when dealing with social issues. Our many spring semester sports are very busy in their ongoing seasons right now. Our amazing tennis team is going 7-1 so far this year, and they will continue going strong tonight with their match against Vista Del Lago. Our baseball team will also be playing against Vista Del Lago tomorrow evening at that same campus as well. Girls soccer had a home game tonight against Union Mine, but we have yet to hear the scores. Our swim team has broken school records every single meet this year so far, and they will seek to beat even more. And last but not least, our softball team will be playing this Saturday at St. Francis High School for their 6th annual All-By Breast Cancer Awareness Tournament. On one last note, our sophomore class will be having a car wash at Midas on Jefferson starting at 10, and our sophomores are fundraising for their prom. They will have to plan next year, so they will take any donations. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to CSEA report. I don't know if anybody's here for CSEA, so we'll go to Washington Teachers Association report. Mr. Don Stoffer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We were hoping to witness ratification of our agreement tonight, but I've been assured that it's going to happen the next meeting. So we'll look forward to that. At the very least, it looks like the AB 1200 disclosure will occur tonight, and that hopefully means that our checks are in the mail, so to speak. One thing we're looking forward to, and we definitely want the district to know that teachers want to be an integral part of, is the local control accountability plan. I know the district has already had a number of parent meetings, some teacher meetings, and some other meetings, but really like to become more closely engaged with the district on working with that. It looks, from my reading of it, that the LCAP is going to have to work very closely with sites as well as the district as a whole. So I'm not sure if the district is planning on working through site councils or what other mechanisms we don't, but in any case, teachers are very anxious to play a big role in this, and we look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to public comment, which I have none. Board superintendent comments and committee updates. Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez?
Okay, I don't have any committee updates, but I forgot my copy of the newsletter, which was full of Washington Unified good news, which was great to see. And one thing in there that I'd like to remind everyone of is our employee recognition night, which everyone in the district is invited to at discounted prices on April 29th. And I'd like to especially thank our sponsors who have helped make that possible to recognize our employees and volunteers. So Wicked West, Capital West Realty, CSEA, WTA, Girard and Associates, and IKEA. So thank you to them for their donations, and hopefully we'll see you all on the 29th.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas?
I have an update from the Yolo County School Boards Association. Thank you, President Menke, for coming to our Excellence in Education Award, and for Superintendent Dayton Gillian, and who else was there? I think we had a lot of people there. So I just want to say thanks for coming, and it was a great night, and just want to remind folks that the Yolo County Children's Alliance is going strong on their VITA income tax returns here locally, and we're having our big fashion show next week right here in this building, with a lot of River City High School students as our models, including one right here. So I hope you can join us and support us in that. And April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we'll be bringing you more material on that too. So thank you.
Thank you. For me, I went to the Yolo County Excellence Awards, which was a fantastic event. Ms. Julie Hoskins, I believe, is in the audience tonight. I saw her somewhere. So congratulations to her. And our best programs in all of our schools, which was a fantastic award to give out. Best program in all of our schools about preventing bullying and being more proactive in disciplinary things at school. So it's working fantastic in our schools, and they were celebrated at that event that night. I have no committee updates. The only one coming up is 2x2. I think it's coming up Monday. So I'll get back to you in the next meeting. The next one would be Superintendent Gillen. I didn't forget.
I was waiting. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I did have a few things I wanted to share. First off, our assessment started this week on Tuesday. In fact, the SBACs began, and we are very pleased with the results. I got a nice message from Lynette Campbell, who's overseeing the testing for us, and I wanted to share that with the board this evening, that our K-8 schools handled the day one of the SBAC quite brilliantly. There were numerous malfunctions on the ETS end of things. Again, remember, this is a test of the test, basically, so it's really kind of a trial run. But our test coordinators and their test administrators made terrific choices in handling each challenge. For the most part, our grade 3-8 students had a rather decent testing experience, and for the first time on real computer-based exams. So we're very pleased with that first run, and we're well into it now. The other things I wanted to mention, we heard about the upcoming event at Raley Field to recognize our employees. We'll also have a celebration to recognize employees in the district program on the 13th of May, Tuesday. And the night before, we have an opportunity to celebrate recipients of the CAC, Community Advisory Committee for SELPA, our local special ed local planning area. They'll be recognizing 3 of our employees, in fact, on Monday May 12th at the Yolo County Office of Ed. So I'm going to include, as we're entering into celebration season, if you will, I'll have a lot of these dates for you in the weekly updates in the weeks to come, so we can get these calendared. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to information discussion items. Number 1 would be Common Core expenditure plan.
Good evening, President Menke, members of the board, Dr. Gilliland. I'm very pleased to introduce the Common Core Task Force of Washington Unified School District, who will be bringing you some information on the Common Core expense plan that's been developed. And this is a Common Core Task Force that has a lot of its beginnings in a committee that was working together. But as you know, we negotiated an MOU that built a structure that allowed for very strong teacher leadership and expertise to emerge and to really direct its efforts. And so you'll be hearing from them tonight on the expense plan that's been submitted. There's no action tonight. The legislation requires that there be a presentation and the action occur at a later meeting. So our plan would be to bring that next time. And then I was going to leave it to our co-chairs, or in very good hands here, to talk a little bit about what it is that they are proposing.
Hello. Thank you for providing the opportunity to have this public meeting so we can explain anything, answer any questions, and hopefully secure approval at a subsequent meeting. I'd like to introduce who you are seeing. It's not just a cast of thousands. This task force is comprised of 13 teachers and a handful of administrators. And we have a set of co-chairs. There's a task force and 3 subcommittees. You'll be finding more about that as we go through our PowerPoint. And I would like to introduce, though, the co-chairs and the committees or task force they belong to. I am a co-chair of the task force, and the other co-chair is Melissa Oliver. And then we have the 2 co-chairs from Instructional Materials Committee, Pam Hawking, Ben Kingsbury. Then we have the 2 co-chairs from the Technology Committee, Kim Harrison, Peter Folks. Then we have a member of the Instructional Materials Committee, Rita Pope, and the 2 co-chairs of Instructional Materials Committee, Julie Hoskins and Monica Reeves. And we'll be walking you through the PowerPoint. Thank you.
You guys have it? All right. So, you gotta love technology. So we're on slide 2, the background. As you can see, the state provided districts, oh, there we go. Slide 2. Does this work? Yay. Do I have control? Yeah. I drew it the wrong way. Oops. Okay. Yay. So the state of California provided districts a chunk of money to help with Common Core implementation. And Washington Unified, our piece of the pie is that $1,476,429. And that is intended to help support implementation of our Common Core standards, and it is designed to be used in one of 3 areas: professional development, instructional materials, and technology. And so with that in mind, as Lynette said, we have the overview of the task force. Did you want to talk more about it?
As you saw in some of the earlier information, there was a Common Core committee that started in April 2012, because that was simply informational, and we were had representatives of sites. It was all very informational. But in the summer of 2013, the funding came along. And so this prompted a change, and converted the committee into a task force whose first task was to come up with the expenditure plan that you have before you. And that slightly varied the configuration, but it carried forth most of the historical knowledge that the members had already gained by their work since April 2012.
So you're going to hear from each one of these subcommittees and their recommendations, but I want to provide an overview at first. And so within that $1,476,000 plus dollars, the task force recommends that a bulk of it be spent in the area of professional development. And that is because we want to really invest in people and our teachers and build the knowledge and skills so we can build that capacity within our district and drive that Common Core implementation. Additionally, it was really important that a chunk of the change was spent on technology. We want those 21st century classrooms for our kids, and technology is embedded in the Common Core standards, and we want that integration. So we recommend about 37% be spent on technology, and you'll get more details from the subcommittee. About 12% is we are recommending to be spent on instructional materials, and this is for two reasons. One, publishers haven't really caught up, and so there's not really good quality materials available at this time. And there's a plethora of open source materials that we can adapt in the meantime. And also we recognize that the money spent in the professional development as well as technology, we will actually create some instructional materials out of that funding, and it's important for us to empower our teachers to create those materials that our students need. So the professional development subcommittee co-chairs will explain a little bit more about their funding recommendations.
Hi, I'm Monica Reeves, and I teach third grade at Stonegate Elementary. You already know Julie. I'm a co-chair of the Professional Development Subcommittee, and with the introduction of the Common Core state standards and the needs for the professional development across the grade levels and subject areas, it has become crucial for the success of our students here in Washington Unified to receive more professional development. The most powerful way to raise student achievement is through sustaining professional development. Professional development is an ongoing cycle of improvement where data is used to encourage reflection, set student and school goals, organize curriculum, and dialogue in a collaborative learning community. The committee considered the professional development that has been happening this year and the needs of the professional development next year in creating the budget before you. We've broken the professional development down into 5 areas of need. The first area addresses leadership teams in English language arts and math who have been receiving in-depth training from the K-12 professional development team from the Sacramento Office of Education and the California Mathematics Project at UC Davis. These lead teachers have been hard at work using the knowledge gained to develop Common Core curriculum plans and supporting teachers at their site. Next year, these teams will be pivotal in guiding job-embedded professional development through the 2014-2015 school year. The next area focuses on supporting continual professional learning across the grade levels and subject areas in support of the Common Core standards. Research has shown that when teachers and support staff receive well-designed professional development continuously over sustained periods of time, it has a positive and significant effect on student achievement. And the third part of the plan on this slide provides professional development for the Common Core Task Force Committee members to participate in learning opportunities that facilitate the implementation of the Common Core standards and ensures that the school district has a reliable system for evaluating the impact this budget has on teacher and student success.
Okay, the final 2 pieces of the professional development plan include the professional development for technology, so that teachers can gain the knowledge and develop proficiency with the tools of technology and to incorporate those tools into their curriculum and in their work with students to really begin to use these tools in the way that supports the Common Core state standards. And you'll be hearing more from the technology group about what some of those devices might look like. And then the final area is kind of our catch-all, the additional training opportunities that we need for other staff members, paraeducators. It's the teacher-to-teacher opportunities where teachers develop expertise and then are able to train other teachers in after-school settings. And also regional workshops and conferences to keep us abreast of what's going on statewide in the implementation of Common Core.
So I wanted to leave you with the idea that we can create a collaborative culture through professional development where educators are building a learning community to achieve student success. That's our problem. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Pam Hawking. I'm a special education teacher at Westville Village.
I'm Ben Kingsbury. I'm the assistant principal at West Bronx Elementary School.
And we were given part of the funding for instructional materials. To begin with, our math materials, even though they were recently adopted not all so long ago, are not currently aligned to the new Common Core standards. In order to support the teachers and students in meeting those needs, there are some open source additional supplemental materials that are going to be needed to be put together. So what you're seeing are some of the possible examples of supplemental materials from other states and counties that are farther ahead than California, and a lot of the materials will be teacher made.
No, I just agree, like, in the conversations that we've been having in the committee for quite some time, we've really found the best resources to be the open source resources currently. And so it's just getting those resources to our teachers that was our focus. And that's how we looked at spending that money. It's what's the best way to get those really great open source resources to every one of our grade levels as teams.
I have a question for you real fast. Are all the books, I hate to say this, do we throw them all out and start over with Common Core stuff, or is it you use the books and then just tie them together?
Through the professional development that the teachers have been going through with UC Davis Mathematics Project, we are learning how to take the materials that we have, make supplements, and make changes. So it depends on the grade level on how much of a modification needs to be made. Some grade levels kept most of their standards are very close. It just takes a lot of explanation from students, so there's a lot more talking, engagement, a higher level of vocabulary, and a little bit more rigor to the math. But some grade levels, such as third grade, now they have a huge focus on fractions, which was never there in the original curriculum. So they are having to pull some second grade materials, some fourth grade materials, and a lot of outside materials, because the way Common Core wants us to teach fractions is a whole new world. So through some of the professional development, we had a whole week the very first summer just to learn fractions, and it took a whole week just to learn how to teach fractions. So some of it we're going to be able to keep, and we're keeping the materials that we have. We just need to be able to integrate new materials. So some of the things that we're going to be using, like from Engage New York, they have nice modules. Their module scope and sequence isn't exactly what we would want to use here in Washington Unified, so we're looking at taking parts of theirs and integrating with some of the other suggestions along with our current curriculum.
But the reason I asked is because with the books, it's back in the days, it was like you go through you start with the book, you start at chapter 3, and you kind of go through the book. I did that in college, everywhere. But so is that kind of going away, and you're kind of picking and pulling, and there's certain things you have to hit, and you're just...
So probably the largest difference would be, it won't be starting in chapter 1 and page by page, chapter by chapter, unit by unit, going through cover to cover. There will be some pages that won't be used, there might be some chapters that won't be used, there might be a unit that won't be used. It depends on the grade levels, how different the current standards are from the old standards, and it depends on whether we've been able to find something that's a better fit than what's currently in what we have.
So do you see the books changing over time with Common Core and how that's all working?
Yes.
And kind of modeling what Common Core is looking for?
Yes,
Okay.
but we're very, very early in these stages. We
Right.
haven't even successfully made it through the first assessment year. So publishers are starting to say this is what Common Core is going to look like in our materials. However, they really haven't been field tested yet, so we don't want to put any expenditure out on an adoption.
Right.
We want to give them time to get caught up, and then we'll pick some of the best that's been field tested a little bit.
And then when we go through our new adoptions, we'll adopt those new materials.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Good.
How about iPads or any computer-based programs rather than books? Are you looking at that, or is that part of this?
We are looking at that, and technology is going to cover part of that.
Thanks.
The other part of what we're looking at are the English language arts materials. Common Core is adding more rigor, higher Lexile levels that the students are required, and an additional level of informational text, expository text, magazines, journals, newspaper articles, and a very high level of integrating speaking and listening in with the reading standards. The open court materials we have, of course, are from 2002, which are a nice base for what we can start with. However, just like the math teachers are going to have to pull some of the units apart, add in some more expository text, possibly create some new materials or take open source materials. So what we're looking at for English language arts is adding classroom libraries of additional informational text for the lower grades. The 3rd through 5th and 6th through 8th grade, they need extended length reading materials. They need something that is not, I'm going to read this story for 1 or 2 days, we're going to do a couple of worksheets and move on. They need materials that they're going to read over 2 weeks. They are going to read in depth, they're going to tear apart, they're going to compare, contrast, that take a little bit more, and that's not currently something that's available. We will be adding in science and social studies curriculum to kind of support open court, but there are still some additional materials that will be needed. And then for the 9th through 12th high school students, they're looking at a higher level of like looking at technical manuals and periodicals and research and closer to a career, getting career ready types of materials that are not available in some of the current. So those are going to be needed to be supplemented also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Peter Folks. I teach 3rd grade at Bridgeway Island Elementary.
And I'm Kim Harrison. I'm the Instructional Technology Coordinator.
The transition to the Common Core state standards and the new Smarter Balance assessment requires the integration of technology-based instruction. The increased access to mobile devices in the classroom will provide the students with the tools and to learn the experience and experience communication and collaboration using technology. These are a couple of the devices that we've really been looking into. They're commonly used in schools right now. I want to warn you right now, though, these are just estimates. I mean, these prices can change at any time. Also, features change, prices can go up if we need additional features. So these are just rough estimates today, literally today. So, and also, we're looking into a couple of different cloud computing solutions, so that those decisions have to be made, and that's going to determine what types of devices we're going to use. The teachers, students, district and site leaders will provide feedback after we get some of these in the classrooms. We're going to be piloting probably combinations of these in various classrooms, and we'll get feedback, and then that will help drive the decision-making process. Following the rollout, we'll put the devices in the classroom. There will be professional development provided to those staff members as they're placed in the classrooms. So the teachers will have the support to get up and running. And in order to decide who's going to get these tablets in their classroom, there will be a proposal made by teachers or grade levels just outlining what their plan is, how they might use these in their classroom most effectively, because we don't want to just put these out into classrooms and teachers really not know what to do with them. So we'll look at some people that are fairly tech savvy or have an interest in technology, some ideas on how they might be used, and then we'll be placing them in those classrooms. Their colleagues will see how they're used, and it'll start to catch on. So we're not looking at just this mass purchase and just flooding every classroom with technology. That would make it difficult to support the teachers and possibly, seeing a lot of machines not being used. Do you have anything to add, Kim?
Just to add that, again, this is just an idea of what is possible in terms of different devices. We've not determined any particular device, model, or operating system. A lot of additional information will be needed in terms of the cloud computing solution. Depending upon what that solution is, certain devices wouldn't be available to us. We've priced out some of the cost just dependent upon today's market value, and again, that could fluctuate depending upon features that we choose to include. So the idea that we wanted to present here is the idea of how many devices we could get into the hands of students for the money that we have allocated to the technology. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that it won't necessarily, we may find out after we do the pilot, that we will have a blend of devices. And the devices will be based on the instructional needs of the different grade levels, because different grade levels have different needs in terms of how they teach children, as well as what's expected in terms of the Common Core, what's expected in terms of the tech readiness in order to prepare them to take the SBAC. They may have different needs at different grade levels, and that will help, the pilot will help guide us in determining what kinds of devices we might want to consider putting in different grade levels. So this is just kind of a snapshot of what we're thinking about, and Peter went over the reason why we wanted to allocate this resource, this amount, to the mobile devices, that we felt it was very important. Hoping to start with a pilot beginning in the fall, which teachers would apply to be a part of.
Right. And to address your question about the mobile devices, tablets, that sort of thing, we're really in the same place as we are with the curriculum. There are a lot of publishers that are providing their materials on, for tablets and that sort of thing, but they're not much better than just a textbook. And so we are looking at, eventually the publishers are going to be offering links to videos, different websites, different interactive materials that will really enhance education. And that's really what we're looking at, is finding ways that technology can enhance the learning experience for students.
I have a quick question about the tablet. I know it's a pilot, and you guys talked about teachers submitting what they would do, like a proposal type of thing. And I was wondering, is that more for you guys to see what they could do with them? Is a pilot to get information of what can be done, or as opposed to having something put in place by the committee and kind of implemented with certain teachers? I was just trying to find out where are you trying to get information from teachers on what they could really do with them in the classroom?
Well, a part of it was when we were discussing, okay, we have, say we put 24 carts, where, right? How do we establish where these carts are going to go?
Right.
It's a limited number, and so for one, we wanted to place them into classrooms where teachers had an idea of what they might do with them. So it's really the best place for us to get information about how well they're working is from teachers who are going to really utilize the equipment to its greatest potential.
And would at some point, would it evolve into a curriculum that then you guys would go out and teach other teachers to use?
Yes.
And we're looking at more of a, those that are in the first round of the pilot, because our pilot program of the mobile devices is dependent upon our wireless implementation. So it's not, it's feasible that we wouldn't have every school site with wireless in September.
Right.
So we may have to do a rolling pilot where we would work with the schools that have the wireless first, and the tools would go to those schools based upon who has submitted an application for the pilot. And then that would become our, we would support them in terms of mentoring and coaching, how to use the device, orientation to device, as well as integrating it into the curriculum. And then perhaps those early teachers would also become coaches for later teachers. So we would be building that personal learning network and that PLC where they are becoming supportive of each other and building that capacity. So it would not be a top-down professional development plan. It would be a big plan of support, guidance, and then collaboration would be essential.
Excellent.
Right. As they go out into the schools and teachers that are using the pilot, the devices in their classroom, well, their colleagues are going to be seeing how they're being used and the potential, and there will be a greater interest in teachers getting the devices in their classrooms. Not everybody wants, not all the teachers want to have this new technology to try and learn and to try and negotiate, when they're maybe not familiar with it. But as they see their colleagues working with the equipment, then the interest will grow, and we'll see, more and more as they come out, more teachers familiar with them.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope we have provided a broad enough platform to invite any questions and make it as clear as it needs to be tonight. The hours that people on this task force have put in make the very people in this room the right ones to answer any questions you could come up with. Our next steps will be basically where the rubber hits the road once we have the funding in place. We know we have the proportions correct. We know we have the rationale correct. But now we need to get down to the details, the day by day. What does this look like in order to take us where we need to be? So if you have any more questions, we're here for you.
Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez.
First of all, it's so wonderful to look out and see all of you smiling and feeling good and just having ownership over this plan. And so I appreciate you also working all day and then coming here tonight to share it with us. I know you've already been working really hard on it. And so it's great to see, and it's great to hear your reasoning and what you've been doing. A couple of things. One, I really liked hearing about the curriculum piece. I agree. So many publishers have just slapped on, this is Common Core, and they've made a few changes, and but it's really not anything different. And so I think that that is a wise decision. There are some I would maybe recommend looking at, like developmental studies has curriculum that is inquiry-based. So there are a couple that are really good places, but I like your ideas for open source. So my question would be looking at, we talked about making the professional development meaningful over time, which we all know is good PD. You need it to be over time. And looking at some other things that you're going to be doing, like working with the math project. If teachers are finding these open source materials for math, especially when looking at the math practice standards, where are they going to get materials for the math? I'm thinking about the manipulatives, and I know people are spending a lot of their own money. Would some of the curriculum money possibly go to manipulatives to help with that?
The funding for the instructional materials is very limited. With the math adoption that we received 5 years ago, there were instructional materials that came along with it. There were little zipper pouches of manipulatives per student. And then teachers already had some materials in their classroom that they were able to use. A lot of the materials that they're going to be needing are teacher made. They need to make number lines, they need to make graphs, they need to make, the students are going to be creating geometric shapes. So some of that is going to be in the teacher made materials, and they're going to be getting the ideas or the models from the open source materials. There wasn't really enough to say we're going to purchase, Unifix cubes in this bulk rate. We just don't have the funding for that at this time.
And then when the teachers are developing this and creating some other things, will there be time in staff meetings to do that, in collaboration time? I just know this is going to take a lot of time. So will there be time woven out already within their contract hours maybe to help them with this?
There has been time allowed during the collaboration where we've been doing training in the morning with UC Davis Math Project, and the afternoon has been for collaboration planning, changing our scope and sequence, looking at the outside materials, and then coming up with ideas. And the teachers in the district are very, very supportive and collaborative of each other. So if one school gets an idea and they're using something, when they go together as a grade level team, we're kind of sharing the wealth. And if you create a document that's working really well, you're emailing it out to your grade level team. And those things seem to be working.
And I'll tell you, being at a specific site, depending on grade level needs, we've been able to designate some time both at site collab and grade level collab to meet those needs. So some of it, I think, as teachers and teams go forward and sort of meet the new challenges of the standards is really figuring out what can they get by with what they have, what they can make, and if there is a small section of things that they just can't do any other way, then we look as a site or as a district for meeting that need. Currently, we really haven't seen, at least at my site, running into that wall where we actually have to go out and buy something.
Good. And then I just have one more question, which would go towards the technology. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
I give the task force big view here. We recognize that although this is a very generous lump of money, it won't be enough to do everything that needs to be done. And part of what the task force will need to do is to find out, when we reach the limits of this funding, what do we still really need and what would we recommend that we bring forward. So that is the other piece of it. Thanks.
My other is to the technology, and welcome, Kim. It's nice to see you have a presentation. And Peter, you also just went to the Q conference, didn't you?
Yes, we both went.
You both went?
Right.
And maybe you could tell us just in one sentence what that was or how it went.
One word.
Okay,
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, not magical, inspirational, amazing.
No, it was really a great experience. I learned an awful lot. Tools involving technology, different teaching ideas that involve technology. So from both ends, I'll learn about an application or a teaching strategy that you can use a variety of different types of technology to implement. Talk to many teachers, district officials, vendors. It was a great experience looking at hardware, education solutions. I was really pleased to see that a lot of the decisions that we've made have been sound decisions, comparing different types of devices and some of the equipment that we use. And I also saw a lot of publishers out there really trying to convince us that their materials are Common Core aligned. And they're trying really hard, but I didn't see anything that really measured up. So again, relying on our own professional development and looking at the open source materials, that's really the best way to go right now.
Great. And then my quick thing that goes with that is just from a standpoint of a parent too, is wanting to know that when my child's on technology, there might be a really good program that they're plugged into at times, but also that it's a style of teaching too. It's not always that you're plugging them in a program. It might be like a project-based learning where they're going off and using the computer too. Right. And would you ever look into, do you think the teachers, you talked about housing them in a room, maybe being in a cart so multiple teachers are sharing those same computers versus just a cart going to one room?
We talked about in terms of the pilot that it might be possible that a grade level team decides how they would like to pilot at their site. And if it is a primary grade with a smaller class size, it would be possible to share the devices across the grade level simultaneously. The purchase that we hope to make would be 40 devices per cart, which is really large, but we wanted to be able to accommodate the large high school classes. So we are working on that idea. If a teacher were selected for the pilot initially, that doesn't mean that teacher only has the devices in their classroom and no one else can use it, because we do, like Peter mentioned, they're going to see their colleagues and their colleagues are going to want to use it. We want to foster that collaboration and that working with your colleagues and receiving informal training, just-in-time training from them as well. So although we will be monitoring and checking on the progress of how it's being implemented in the classes that were identified as part of the pilot, it isn't something that would have to only be in that class, that it would be used in other classes within probably that grade level or that general location. We don't want carts being moved across campus or anything like that. So.
Right, and our goal is to implement enough of these carts so that every student would have access to a device. And that's correct, right?
Over time.
Eventually, right?
Over time.
But, it's really hard as a teacher not to share and not to collaborate. And I've been piloting a cart in my classroom. I have a device for every student. but I've already been bringing the other 4 third-grade classes through my room to use the technology, some of the things that I've been doing. So we are collaborating, and the cart is not moving because of the wireless issue, but the carts, they're not chained to the classroom, and you'll definitely see teachers, grade levels, departments collaborating considerably.
Ms. Viegas?
I think this is super exciting, actually. I love the fact that the kids are getting this exposure, because a lot of the kids in Washington Unified may not have this opportunity at home. So I think you are so lucky to be able to show them this, and definitely something that they'll use as a lifelong thing. So I'm excited, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
And Mr. Gillen?
Thank you. Just real quickly, I'd like to thank the team. I really appreciate the collaborative spirit that you're demonstrating. This is a very exciting time. Couple points about the funding. I think it's important to point out that this was recognized to be kind of a startup fund, if you will, to make a transition to Common Core. And I think specifically with the technology piece, the legislative intent was really to make sure that districts and schools were prepared to do what we did this week, with the SBAC, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, because of the demands on technology. We're in a very, I think, fortuitous place that we're able to even talk about tablets when other districts are still trying to get the capacity, to deal with the test, if you will. So that, I think, is a tribute to the board for the, the proactive nature and stance we've taken toward technology. I'd also like to add that, as Lynette mentioned, that this money certainly won't go far enough. This is really just a start. There's already lobbying efforts and legislative interest in really, continuing this funding. This was a 2-year funding allocation for a 3-year window, and we recognize it's not going to get us far enough, but I think it's a critical mass that we'll be able to address as we move forward. So it's a great start, and this is evidence of a wonderful team pulling together to make it happen. So thank you, team.
I have, actually, did any of the technology funding go to desktops to facilitate testings? So that's already in place, correct? I wanted to also talk about the Wi-Fi, because I didn't want to gloss over it, but the board, it is one of our priorities, and it's something that is going to be brought back here in the next couple months of how we're going to end up rolling that out. So it's something we're all very, very excited about, to facilitate the work with iPads, or I say iPads, it's in front of me, but tablets of any kind of form. But and that's something that we think is very important to get kids working on, and to just facilitate the education of students in the classroom. So we look forward to that kind of stuff. We also know that the funding isn't going to be enough. We'd like to think so sometimes, but it rarely is. But that's something that I think the board would like to see in a future date, 6-9 months down the road, is another presentation of coming back and saying, here's what we did with it, here's what we also need to do, and then we can start to help facilitate some of that. And if there's a stopgap somewhere in the middle, bring it back to us, and we can talk about where we can fill in those gaps. I think it's a priority number 1, has been for 2 years now as a board, to implement Common Core. So I think it's our job up here to really make sure we can facilitate that monetarily, with support, with anything we can, just by talking about it a lot, to make sure that everybody out there is clued into what's going to go on and what's going to happen over the next couple of years. I think from everybody, I thank you so much for all your work and everything you guys do, and we hope to see you guys back very shortly to what else we can help you with. Okay? Thank you. Okay, that takes us, actually I wanted to, if I can, Superintendent Gillen, can I, CSEA, do you have anything to, we came back from closed session fairly quickly.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I was running a little late.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to remind the board, I do have the date for classified week is in May, and I just want to throw the dates out to you so you can have enough time to plan. It's the 3rd week of May, May 19th through the 23rd is classified week. So we would like for you guys to leave that open, and we are interested in the ACE program, where the board, the superintendent, and the other HR will come and work as a classified person. We're really looking forward to that. I mentioned it at the chapter meeting, and the members really want it again. So we're really excited about doing that again. But I must report that right now we're still having a couple of issues are still going on, and we're hoping to resolve them real soon by next week. We still have some positions that has not been filled, and so I'm really hoping by Wednesday everything could be taken care of. That's all I can say. But thank you for letting me come and speak, and I'm really looking forward for Classified Week. Thank you.
Deborah, I'd like to say thank you to CSEA for the donation to our celebration that we're going to be having at the River Cats game.
Okay, then we jump back to our information discussion items, and we're going to number 2, review results of the 2014 Bond Survey Public Opinion Poll.
Yes, members of the board, we have with us this evening Mr. Brian Godby, who's here with Godby Research. He was the consultant that we hired to facilitate our public opinion survey in regard to the possibility of a bond initiative. And Brian is here this evening to present his results and findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm pleased to be here to present the results of what I think are actually pretty good news. I see where there looks like it's on its way up. There we go. Great. So I have a summary of the results this evening. There's literally hundreds of pages of detailed cross-tabulation analysis, which we won't go through tonight, but will be available when we finish the process. So to begin with, and let's see if I'm doing this right. Okay, great. The purpose, of course, that you commissioned us for was to look at the public's perception of the district and the financial management of public funds as part of the climate that a bond measure would be on the ballot in, to look at the potential voter support for a bond measure, to look at different tax rates that might be presented to the voters, to look at the projects and programs that you might fund with the proceeds, and that's quite a few different items. Then to look at various positive and negative statements and see how those impact support. And of course, there's a wide variety of demographic and behavioral characteristics available, as I mentioned in the detailed analyses. This was, of course, a telephone survey. The universe that we interviewed were likely November 2014 voters, and we calculate that through various algorithms based on voting propensity in the past as well as registration date. We were in the field from February 18th through the 24th of this year. The average survey was 18 minutes long. The sample was 401 likely November voters that we completed. And the margin of error then is plus or minus 4.8%. Any questions about the methodology before I go on? I know that's a summary. Okay, great. So the first series of questions was what we call the district climate section, and we ask a couple different questions. The first one is whether you have an opinion about the quality of education being provided by the Washington Unified School District, and we ask, is it favorable or unfavorable? And then we drill down and say, is that very or somewhat favorable? So you can look at the data as you see here, or as we do, you can aggregate it and look at favorable and unfavorable, and you can see that there's 48% in round numbers that are favorable versus 15% unfavorable, and 37% don't know. The don't know seems high to most people who look at this, but that's fairly typical for school districts across the state. And what we, given that statement, we also look at the favorable to unfavorable ratio, because that makes it easy for us to compare with other districts that have successfully put bond measures on the ballot. You have a 3.2 to 1 ratio, which is a good ratio. We have been successful with that ratio being as low as 1.9 to 1, so substantially less than where you're at. So that's a good place to be. It's important to note, though, that these are all likely voters if we were to put this on the November ballot, so it is important to not ignore those don't knows. They are a blank slate, to be written on. They will cast ballots. So it's important that there's outreach to talk to those people about these kinds of things in the context of a bond measure. The next question that we asked drills down a little bit more, and it's do you have a favorable, unfavorable impression of the district's managing of taxpayer dollars? The methodology is the same. We ask favorable, unfavorable, then drill down into very or somewhat on either side of the equation. If we look at the aggregate again, we see we're at about 37% favorable versus 17% unfavorable, with a don't know of 45%. That's actually a little higher than we see in most communities. Most communities, this number goes up over the quality of education rating, and so we see it typically in the high 30s, but not into the 40s. So again, I think there is a need to make sure that there's outreach efforts either on the school district's behalf in a nonpartisan and informational setting, or ultimately in an independent campaign that might come together after the board puts a measure on the ballot. In terms of the ratio, favorable to unfavorable, we're at 2.2 to 1, and that's actually a good place to be given that don't know. We have been successful as low as 0.9 to 1. So that's actually a negative ratio where we've been successful. So you're certainly substantially above that. So both of these questions indicate that the climate is favorable, but there is some work to be done making sure that those don't knows do understand what they need, what they feel they need to know about the district's quality of education and financial stewardship to feel comfortable in then making a decision on the bond measure. The next question in this climate section is an opinion of whether the district needs additional funds in a generic sense to do its job providing a quality education to students in the community. This is a little bit different. We don't create a ratio. We just are looking, because this is a 55% Prop 39 bond measure, we're looking for something that approximates that threshold. As you can see here, we do have in round numbers 55% that agree the district needs additional funding, 23% disagree, and 22%, again in round numbers, don't know or don't have an opinion. Again, because this is likely voters, these people are going to cast ballots. The don't knows aren't going to not vote. They are going to vote. They are going to show up in November. So that is a slate that needs to be written on. This is not a bad place to be, and we see this in a lot of districts like you that we're right at that cusp of 55% that we need for Prop 39 bond measure. After that set of questions, we switched gears and presented them with an initial ballot test, and what this does is gives us a level of uninformed support, meaning that the only thing that people know about the potential bond measure is exactly what you see in the box on the right-hand side of the slide. That's about 75 words. The actual ballot question is limited to 75 words exactly. There's some advantages. Washington Unified School District counts as one word. I don't know why, but it does. And so this is what might happen if somebody walked into the voting booth or picked up an absentee ballot and didn't hear or look for anything else. They just read the question and chose yes or no. And so we read the question, we then ask them, would you vote yes or no? And subsequently, we then say, is that definitely or probably on either side of the equation? And we get the detailed information that you see in this pie chart. For purposes of making a feasibility decision with respect to a go or no go, should we put this on the ballot or not, we aggregate the yes and no. And so we look at 69%, or I'm sorry, 68% in round numbers that are yes versus 26% no and 15% don't know. That's a great place to be. We've got a 55% threshold. All these people know it's just what we told them, and they're already well above the threshold with that 5% error rate. This could be as low as 63. That's still above the 55% threshold. So that's a great place to be starting. There's no question about that. The next slide is sort of an eye chart because it encompasses a lot of different questions, and these are all the different pieces of the measure, the things that we might spend money on if the bond measure were successful. And the idea here is to prioritize what's important to the voters in terms of all these different projects. They may not be necessarily the educational priorities, but they are in fact the voter priorities. So part of the trick is to hopefully those two overlap, and you can create a measure that is successful. The way we ask this question, we read each of these items that you see on the left-hand side of the slide in a random order, and then say, are you more or less likely to support the measure based on knowing that we would spend the money in that fashion? Again, we drill down another step and say, is that much more likely or somewhat more likely? There's a middle point that's no effect, but we don't offer that because it just offers or provides an easy place for people to go. We want to force them to make decisions in this particular context. When we are done with the data collection, we then go back in the data processing stage and assign numeric values to each of those responses, of which you see part of here on the slide. A much more likely gets a 2, a somewhat more likely a 1, a no effect 0, a somewhat less likely a -1. You don't see that on the chart because there weren't any negative responses. And a much less likely gets a -2. So it gives us a scale that runs from -2 to +2. And we can use an average approach, a mean score, to more easily rank these items. Instead of having to look at 6 different percentages, we can just look at one number. From a statistically significant perspective, what we look for is about a 0.2 difference from high to low for something to be outside. If it's outside of that 0.2, then it's probably a significant difference. So what that allows us to do is create tiers that are in fact basically at the same level or tied from a statistical perspective for the top priorities. In the slide you can see that we have actually 4 different tiers, 3 of which are labeled. The top tier includes remove dry rot and mold from all schools at 1.26 on our scale. That equates to 83% at least somewhat more likely. So that's way over the 55% threshold. That's very important to the voters. In that same tier, we have replace leaking roofs and windows, make all schools accessible for disabled students, modernize and construct classrooms to meet current safety codes, and classrooms for career technology and vocational training would be created. Those are all tier 1. Well, there are numeric differences, and if you've got to create an order, that's the order. Statistically speaking, they are all tied, though. The second tier starts with provide up-to-date science and computer labs at 1.04 on this particular scale, which equates to a 76% at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. So again, substantially above the 55% threshold. The rest of that tier includes update and provide school libraries and facilities, update heating and air conditioning systems, upgrade classroom electrical wiring and Wi-Fi networking, reconstruct, renovate, repair aging elementary classrooms, and prevent overcrowding at the high school. The third tier then is the last set of items, and I won't read that other than to say the top item in that third tier, update and build student restrooms at 0.74, equates to 62% at least somewhat more likely. So you can see how each of these tiers is a different level of priorities to the voters. Moving on to the next series of questions, the chart looks much the same, although there is a slight difference. These are supporting statements, and we identify them as supporting statements that the supporters of the measure might make. Having said that, in a questionnaire, it doesn't make sense to telephone respondents that they would become less likely to support the measure based on what the proponents say. So we've, over the years, dropped that half of the equation out in the response category, so there is no somewhat less likely, much less likely in this category. We still do the same thing, assign the numeric values, but the reason for the caveat is that you can't compare these mean scores directly with the previous ones because there is no negative numbers associated with these, and they are necessarily higher. They still do the same purpose, though, and that is to give us a priority in terms of what the voters think are positive statements that would cause them to support the measure. Again, using the same 0.2 difference to define our tiers. At the top, we have every penny will benefit local schools and can be controlled locally. These are summaries. What is also in that statement was and cannot be taken by the state. That is the number one item virtually everywhere in the state, and where it's not the number one item, it's the number two item. Very close, number two. So that is, remains here in this district being a key issue of accountability, really, that needs to be part of your measure. And if you could look back at the ballot question that we created initially, it had that cannot be taken by the state in it. And while we were hypothesizing that it would be the highest here, it was based on evidence from other districts. That 1.29 ranking equates to 75% at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. So again, substantially over the 55% majority that we need to pass a Prop 39 bond measure. Tier 1 also includes some of the schools that are more than 50 years old. No money will be used to increase salaries, benefits for administrators, another accountability measure. Energy efficiency will provide hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in savings. The rest of that item is also to be used for core academics in the classroom. So obviously people are more concerned about how do this translate into quality education rather than just quality buildings. Obviously there's a nexus between the two, but the goal is quality education. The goal is not quality buildings. The buildings are just a vehicle to get to that ultimate goal. Equal access to modern, high-quality education facilities requires citizens' oversight and reports to the community in the top tier, another accountability measure. Protect quality of academic instruction in core subjects, and then classroom technology essential to build strong academics. Those are all in the top tier. The top of the second tier then is quality of local schools contributes to the value of homes. That 1.08 is equal to a 66% at least somewhat more likely. So again, you can see the difference between the top tier and the second tier. And I won't read all of those items, but the good news is here there's lots of things, and all of these things are above the 55% threshold required for a Prop 39 bond. So there's lots of good things to talk about in terms of what the money might be spent on in the previous slide, or positive statements that would cause people to support the measure. Because we don't live in a world that is only our point of view, we also look at the negative side of the equation. And so we have a series of opposition statements. This methodology is the same as that what we just talked about. It is only the much more likely to oppose the measure, somewhat more likely to oppose the measure, or no effect. We don't put a minus sign in front of it to make it seem bad, so the bigger it is, the worse it is. And at the top of this tier, and these are basically all tied, we have that we have a city, Mello-Roos, and school property taxes already. At 0.84 equates to 52%, at least somewhat more likely to oppose the measure. So that's above the 45% 0.1 necessary to defeat a Prop 39 bond measure. So it's important to take that into account and be prepared to address that as we move forward, should the board decide to put this on the ballot. The district built a new high school in 2008, but was over budget, is virtually at the same level. Public employee salaries and benefits are out of control. It doesn't matter if that's not true. That's very often an anti-tax argument in these kinds of bond campaigns. So we test that here as well as in other places. It continues to be an important negative argument that we need to be aware of and have an answer for that deals with the specifics rather than just the claims that often wind up in anti-tax ballot arguments. Economic recovery is very fragile. Now is the wrong time. Again, at virtually the same level, we have little control over that, obviously. We hope that by November, should you decide to put this on the ballot, that things will be better. Housing developers, not taxpayers, should pay for the new schools. That's the bottom end of our scale here at 0.66, or 42% at least somewhat more likely to oppose the measure. So that's right below, statistically insignificant, but right below the 45% necessary to defeat a Prop 39 bond So at this point in the survey, or this last couple questions, we've been asking people somewhat in a vacuum. What do you think about this item? What do you think about this item? And we don't really force them to think about all of them, positive, negative, how we would spend the money together. But in the next question, where we come back to that ballot question that we initially posed to them, we do, in fact, do that. What's happened is sort of what happens in a campaign. People hear lots of things, pro and con, and they've got to make up their own mind. There's no one there to say, do this or do that. And so that's what happens in this question. Again, we've asked yes, no, and then drilled down into the definitely, probably. For our feasibility analysis, we aggregate the yes, no, and here you see we're at 67% yes, which is virtually identical to where we started. So that suggests that the negatives do have some impact. Because, well, the positives were pretty good, we're not going up. The good news is, while we did go numerically down, it's only 0.8%, which, again, statistically is insignificant. But if the negatives were posed without any positives, then you would have seen this drop. And so that's sort of not a warning, but a call to there needs to be effort to do outreach from the district and provide information that is unbiased and non-advocacy, and ultimately there will be not the district's responsibility, but an independent campaign will have to come together and do the positive side of the equation that we did in the survey. This is a great place to be. There's no question about that, but it's not something that we should just put on the ballot and plant the party. There's a good deal of hard work to be done, and an indication of that is, in my experience, if you don't have an independent campaign that happens after the board puts it on the ballot, again, not sponsored by the district, you can expect to lose half of the probably yeses. If you lose half of the probably yeses, we get 51%, which is a narrow loss. And so there is going to need to be that independent effort, which is not, again, the district's responsibility, but an independent effort. The next question that we asked was, again, a series of items, and we start this from the high end at $66, which is the potential tax rates, and work down. In fact, for Prop 39, the highest tax rate that you can assess is $60 per 100,000. So everybody says, well, why did you ask 66? And that's because this is a bargaining game question. And people on the phone recognize it as a bargaining game question, and they know that the first answer to any bargaining game is always no. And so it doesn't matter what number we throw out there, they're going to say no and wait for the second number because they know that there's at least one more number coming. So we asked the 66 as an effort to get rid of what is called context bias, and then we can look more accurately at the $60 rate, which is what Prop 39 allows a unified district to do. In that particular case, you see we're at 52% in round numbers. When we go down to $48, we jump up to 59%, which is above the 55% required by Prop 39. What's going on in there is there are psychological ceilings in numbers, and we all know that if you go to Target, everything is $9.99 or $19.99. Now, we can't probably do that as a government agency, but there are still psychological ceilings nonetheless. So they are at $49.99 and $39.99. While 48 is above the 55% that we need, we have to go down to 36 to get above that 55% plus the 5% error rate. So at $36, we're at 63%. Subtract 5%, and we're down into the 58% level, which does exceed the Prop 39 requirement. Because of that psychological ceiling issue that I just mentioned, it's probably not 36 that is that tipping point with the error rate. It's probably 39, because there's usually not a difference between 36 and 39. We're picking tax rates that make sense from a financial perspective, and also tax rates that make it more difficult to to predict what the next rate is going to be in the bargaining game. If you do 59, 49, 39, that becomes really easy to do. If you do 60, 48, 36, you got to be able to do the math on the fly. And people don't typically do that, particularly not going down. So point is the tax rate tipping point is probably about $39 to give us a comfortable margin of error over the 55% threshold. So in summary, the survey suggests that there is a solid base of support for a bond measure. It was 67.8 in the first test and 67 in the second test. There's no significant difference, and that suggests that a November election this year is certainly viable. The data suggests that the ballot question could be improved by changing the order of some of those bullets that we saw. This is a recapitulation of the top features that we tested: removing dry, rotten mold from the schools, replacing leaking roofs and windows, making all schools accessible to disabled students, modernizing and constructing classrooms to meet current safety codes, and classrooms for career technology and vocational training, etc., down the rest of the list. The tax rate, as I just said, for the Prop 39 threshold is somewhere between $36 and $39 that we cross the tipping point. Above that is obviously a bigger risk proposition. Below that or at that point is a lesser risk proposition, and that's part of the analysis as well that the board needs to go through, is how much risk do you want to assume. The data really do suggest strongly that the district should move forward with the next steps to put a bond measure on the November ballot, and we feel very confident that in that conclusion. Those next steps, though, do include not only preparing a measure and doing all of the due diligence that you need to create that full text resolution as well as the final ballot question, but also doing outreach in a public information setting, and then again hoping that there is an independent campaign committee that comes together after the board puts the measure on the ballot. So that concludes the presentation for this evening. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Before we go there, I have a public comment. Linda, do you want to?
Hi.
Hello.
I would just like to make one suggestion that I don't see on the wording for your bond measure. First of all, words are important, and they're very important when you're going out for a bond. And there's one crucial element that I think would spark interest in a positive way, whether you're a parent or community member, and that's the word safety. Safety in schools. And I don't see that anywhere on the wording. So I would make the suggestion that perhaps that one of those bullets where it says reconstruct, renovate, and repair aging schools to ensure student safety, that's going to strike a nerve with parents. That's going to strike a nerve with the public. There have been far too many incidents in the past few years where student safety has been overlooked, whether it's the physical plant or whether it's things that you can incorporate into purchasing through your bond measure. Safety of people working for you and safety of kids on campus is critical.
Thank you, Ms. McMahon. Go to board comments or questions. Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez?
Linda, you made me laugh because I just wrote safety, right? Whereas you were, that was a really good point. My question would be, I would assume that the people who don't know or no opinion are probably older or don't have children. Would that be what you might assume as well?
We did, of course, an analysis of those detailed cross-tabulations, of which I do have with me. On the ballot tests, age was not really a significant factor. It was really partisanship.
Okay.
And that was pretty much what you predict. There were some age differences in terms of which features are more important, or which positive arguments or which negative arguments had a bigger sway, but age was not a significant factor in the ballot questions.
Okay. And then I think it's a little separate, I guess, from this survey, but I think two groups that are really important for the district to look at that can change the unlikely voters are teachers, parents, and staff, because those are ones, if you can get them on board, the parents can be on the schools, right off the school site, passing out all the literature. Teachers can have it in their car windows, and I think that those are two critical people who can do, groups who can do a tipping point. And when I say teachers, I should say all staff classified, talking about everybody. So maybe there's a way we can explore those two groups as well on a separate thing. But thank you for this.
I think this is interesting. I was excited to hear about this. Did you ask? You're asking all voters. So did you ask people who have kids in public schools versus private schools, or kids who parents who have had kids graduate out of our schools, or?
Yeah, the universe really, we weren't focusing on do we have enough parents. It was do we have the accurate likely voter turnout. We did ask a question in the demographic section was, do you have children under the age of 18 living in your household? So that means you not only get parents, but you get older siblings, 18 to 22 years old, for example, or you get grandparents potentially that are in that group. That group that have 18-year-old or younger children is about 32% of this voting universe. Now, almost everybody goes, wow, that's all? We have a lot more kids in our population, and that's because of the turnout that is built into this model. We are looking at a gubernatorial turnout, not a presidential turnout, and certainly not all registered voters, and definitely not all residents. So as you go down in the turnout model, you're going to see fewer and fewer children in the household. If there was an independent campaign that came together to actually register parents that are not registered, that's one way of changing that outcome.
And then the only other point that I'd like to point out was how low the FAFSA stuff scored, which I think would score a lot higher than that. But kind of interesting to see the arts so low. That's it. Campaign.
I just want to say thank you for all the work. I know this is takes up a lot of time and effort to put together. There's a lot of, I think, information, and I think it's pivotal for the board to kind of see this kind of information and digest it and figure out what we want to do as a next step. So I appreciate all the hard work. So thank you. Okay, move on to action items. Number 1, accept the Capital Investment Program CIP document. Superintendent Gillen.
Thank you. This dovetails real nicely with the previous presentation. I want to just remind the board that we've been involved with the Capital Investment Program development over the past several months, and we've talked to the board about developing a master plan of sorts that will take us through the next 10 years of progress for our district. A bond measure, as you've heard this evening, is a possibility as soon as November 2014, but ultimately we're looking to do this work reflected in the scope of the document, the CIP document, that will require funding mechanisms throughout the life of the actual document. So here this evening to give us an update on the CIP program and document is Mr. Bob Simons with MBEI Architects, our lead facilitator in the think tank work that has prepared this document this evening. Bob.
Great, Governing Board, Superintendent. We're happy to be here to give you an update on the CIP program. And I see you have it in front of you. It just keeps getting weightier, doesn't it? And so that's okay. And you'll actually get another final notebook. We kind of just determined that it'd be nice to have something that you can update without having to do a full new printing, index divider, so you can go to the sections a lot quicker. But just to give you a real quick update, you know, we're continuing to expand the people that are involved with the project. You know, this is just where we are in this overall schedule, which you clearly have seen. In the table of contents, what we did is we just identified all of the areas that have been updated, and obviously you have cost numbers now, you know, that we've gone through. So we've gone through every school, as you know, in great detail, and evaluated effectively cost dollars in those different areas, including all the individual schools, you know, associated with that. So, and you can feel free to take a look at that. Also, we've updated the DeLong's office, Hancock and DeLong. They created a new update on potential funding from the state, and so there's a new document in the book for that. And also in the energy section, we've also updated kind of a really an implementation plan for the energy section. And so that's in there, the ARC plan that's associated with it. And we also went through each of the different site areas and made sure that we're covering everything, even all the photovoltaic systems. We just want to make sure that this document becomes really a, firm document that, identifies really all the existing work. So with that is in the executive summary, you'll see there is a implementation plan or a cost summary of all the different schools and associated work with that. And, and it is a summary based on information today, as we see the different schools. And then also in the site assessment portion of it, let me get to it, we again identify the different areas, that are significant. We broke it down based on building shell, and then we also looked at the interiors, all the services, which would include all the air conditioning and support, lighting controls, equipment and furnishings, and really any new construction, and obviously all the site development costs. So that's how it's all effectively breaking down in the development of the project. And so you can get a sense of how this is ultimately modeling. I won't go through all the information we went through back in February. It was a lot, but I thought it was significant. This was the school funding section that has been added into the development document, and obviously you can read that at your leisure. And then we have, there we go, under the district energy program, the ARC alternatives, which is really, and then that'll follow with Chevron and synergistics. So that's kind of just the brief outline. A lot to absorb and read, but this is an organic document, as we like to say, and we recognize that this is going to always continually evolve, and as we gain more information, it just becomes tighter and tighter for us. Great. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? You have to wait for them to read the whole booklet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to absorb, but I think it's a really good document. We've gotten great input throughout the district. Everyone's been very supportive, and that's really helped a lot. A lot of engineers have gone through every building, and I think it gives you a good sense of the value that's needed in the district. But ultimately, prioritization will end up taking place at some time in the future if you decide to move forward.
All right. No, I think it's a great document. I had I don't know if it's the pleasure of going through every page and kind of looking at it, but it kind of just gives you a bigger, broader idea of really the upgrades that need to happen and some improvements that need to take place in our schools to make them more safe and to make them more accessible and to make them more engaging for students.
Absolutely, and that's the exciting part of a document like that. It does give you a roadmap effectively to really improve all the district schools, and that's what makes it exciting.
And for me, it was, and I want to point out the fact that we're going to probably approve a number of these coming forward as things get updated and things get put into place. So it's not, we're not approving this document as it is and then it's going to stay that way.
That's correct.
And for me, it is that open, like that working document that we can kind of use and look at and use for the bond or for whatever's going on and kind of prioritize kind of what we want to do as a board and as a district. So that's why it's neat to see it now and then to see things update and kind of get included.
And even the presentation today will be part of this document and those kinds of recommendations. So it's all in one place. It gives a better sense of the whole program. So.
I'd just like to thank you too, because it's overwhelming in number of pages. It's not when you open it up. It's really clean, easy to read, and so I appreciate that. And things like corridor contains a hole from water damage and is patched with plastic trash bags and tape. Makes you realize that we do need to explore ways to help
some work to be done,
all of our areas,
yes.
which our maintenance is doing a good job too. I know of working on, but they need some more help.
Or even the Wi-Fi discussion tonight. We've definitely heard that.
I think if every voter could see this, it would make a really good argument for a bond, because it's there's some conditions in here that need to be publicized, I think, to show people the true condition of the schools. So thank you for the color pictures.
Oh no, our pleasure. Our pleasure for working.
And I like the document, and it was when I first got on the board. It was I always wanted, and I know it was a robust need or want that I had, but if going through all the facilities and kind of having a checklist of what's up to date, what needs to be repaired, what's in, in that middle ground that, we'll need to look at in 10 years from now or whatever. And that's kind of what this encapsulates. It kind of shows us what is in disrepair, what is in good repair,
That's correct.
How are we going to have to expand? Are we going to have to get rid of portables and build new structures? So that it almost gave me what I was asking for a long time ago.
I appreciate that. That's great. A lot of people went into that.
Yeah, and it's beneficial to us because then we can really see and look at what we really need to do. And we've already, I think, talked to staff about kind of prioritizing the things that we can take care of, what things the bond would take care of, and then what we'd have to carve out extra additional dollars to then do on our own or through capital investment programs or however we wanted to do it.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate all the hard work, and I know we'll probably be seeing you a lot more in the future. So now I just need a motion to approve the document as it is.
So moved.
A second.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So 3 ayes and no
Great.
noes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Okay, number 2, AB 1200, disclosure of management confidential salary enhancement. Superintendent Gillen?
Thank you. Yes, actually, the AB 1200 disclosures is a requirement of Government Code Section 3547.5 that in essence requires that Scott Landsberger and I verify that we in fact can afford the salary and compensation increases that the board has recently approved. So this is a formality. We're well underway in bringing forward a similar document for CSEA. I believe they're voting tomorrow, and we expect a positive return from that, so we'll be back with that. And this is a formality, in essence, that verifies that, in fact, we're living within our means, if you will, to give our employees a long overdue and certainly justified salary increase. So we're proud to do that.
Any discussion from the board or questions? The only thing I want to say is that I want to give a lot of credit to past boards and to staff. I mean, this is certifying that we do have the money to actually do this, and I feel real fortunate being a board member for the last 3 years and pretty much weathering the storm. I mean, we had to do some cuts, and they were tough, and it was one of the toughest things I've had to do as a board member. But I think we weathered them pretty well, and this is the upside of that we don't have to do an immense amount of putting back in places the things that we cut, but now we're enhancing salaries, and it's a positive for our district in many ways, and we've talked about that as the board is trying to increase salaries for teachers so that we become more lucrative, so teachers want to come here and be a part of our district, and keeping the teachers we do have that are already doing the hard work that we do, that you guys do in the classroom. So this is for you guys, this is for CSCA, it's for all the management. So I'm just real thankful that the staff really worked hard to keep us in the place we are and able to do this now. So kudos to them. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those are 3 ayes and no noes. And we'll also do number 3, AB 1200, disclosure of WTA salary enhancement. I'll also ask for a motion for that.
So moved.
I'll second.
There's only 3 of us up here. We can only do it so many ways. All those in favor say all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So 3 ayes and no noes, and that also approves. That takes us to number 4, approve the second interim fiscal report for fiscal 2013-2014, which I believe Scott Landsberger will be joining us for a brief presentation.
This is more than 10 slides.
Well, it's more than 10 seconds, but it'll be
No, she
way
said 10
briefer than what we've
slides.
done.
10 slides.
I can go through them pretty quickly. I promise.
And go.
On the clock?
Yeah.
Okay. This is your second interim report for fiscal 2013-14. It's really nice to be able to bring you some good news as we continue to see the local control funding formula evolve. Every time we get the spreadsheet from the FCMAT group, it's got additional details in it that the prior version of the spreadsheet did not have. And that just goes to show you how fast this is being put together. When you implement a complete change in the way that you finance schools and you don't have the formula to come up with that dollar amount developed yet, it's how quick this has been done, and it's being done on the fly, but I think they've done a good job. A couple standard slides to start with, budget cycle. Just to remind you that we are always in more than one budget year. We are currently doing the second interim report for the 13-14 fiscal year, and we've also already started budget planning for 14-15. I want to say last time we brought this, I think we were in 3 fiscal years at the same time. So always a lot of work going on in the budget cycle. Positive, qualified, negative certification. I don't know if I'll continue to bring this slide up because it's not necessarily an issue anymore. It was something I wanted to make sure everybody understood what a qualified and negative certification brought. If you had one, we have a positive certification again for you tonight, and we're very proud to be able to say we've never had to bring you a qualified or a negative certification. So it's probably the last time you'll see this slide. Local control funding formula target. This is the new target. This target is $67.1 million. It is a higher target than the target that we brought to you last time for a couple of reasons, and you'll see those as we get into the specifics of what's in the interim report. There were two major factors in changing this number, and I'll show them to you, but I want to make sure you saw the snapshot of what the 8-year target is for the district as of today. This is that target as a percentage. I think I always like to see it graphically because it shows you that the super majority of the money that the district is going to get, 79% of it, is base. That's your base grant, and that's what's doing the general work. So most of the money coming to the district is still in that category. First interim versus second interim. Second interim is kind of in the background. This is really the key. It's after you run all the different pieces through, you look at what your total entitlement is, and you look at the funding gap, and then you go, okay, so at the end of the day, how much money are we going to have coming through the local control funding formula? At the first interim report, it was $46.6 million. It is now $47.085, which is about a $400,000 increase to the revenue stream for the local control funding formula. Significant changes in the interim report. The third from the top or second from the bottom is your primary reason why you're seeing a fluctuation in the revenue for the local control funding formula. Typically, we have waited on P2ADA, and we've waited because we've always wanted to be conservative, make sure things are happening, and we were in that ultra conservative mode about not making sure we projected revenues ahead of time if we didn't think we were going to have them. This interim report has P2ADA in it. I've been here 5 years now, and we've run a statistical analysis on that second interim, the P2ADA versus seed beds, and we've looked at it year after year after year, and we're comfortable enough with our model that we think we'll hit P2ADA at 95% of seed beds. For the district, that's a growth of 146 students. That's what generated the $400,000 in the increase to the LCFF revenue. Other things that are in the interim report, we are very specific about how we put things in the budget, in the agenda. So you have the AB 1200 approvals because the value of the AB 1200 salary settlements, they're in the interim report. So the cost of those agreements are already in the interim report. The value, we have a placeholder for the CSEA agreement pending ratification by their group, which we expect to happen, but we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves and put that out and specifically into those salary lines until we had ratification from the membership. And the other significant change here is if you look in the detail of the interim report, the general fund, about the first page of it, there's a section in there where you see money moving from the unrestricted side to the restricted side in contributions. You don't see as big of a number there anymore. I love to say it's because we're saving money, but it's because things are now not restricted. And things that we used to make a contribution to before are all on the unrestricted side. We still make a contribution, but it nets itself to zero on the unrestricted side. You don't see the money moving around from just, the regular money coming into transportation help offset the cost of transportation. We created our own internal resources because we still want to be able to come back and say transportation cost X above the allocation that we got from the state. So you'll still see those in an unaudited actuals report, but you don't see the money shifting back and forth because it's all on the unrestricted side now. Cash continues to be something that we watch. We've looked at the model a couple times, and it's interesting, Kylie and I have had conversations, and she's had conversations with the county office. The model that we use for cash is having a hard time keeping up with the EPA account and the fluctuation that it has and what it actually does to the payment of apportionments. So we think the cash model has a flaw in it. This one says that it thinks we're going to be $5.5 million in the hole on June 30th. The same model the first year of EPA last year said we'd have $3 million in the hole on June 30th, and we had positive cash. So we're evaluating the model, we're working with the county office because all the districts in the county use the same model and they're all coming up with the same issue. So we expect a new model for cash. We'll continue to monitor it, but we don't think we'll have any challenges with it. As I said last year, we did not have to do any internal borrowing. If that becomes an issue for us, we'll do internal borrowing. We do have money in other funds that we could offset for that like 2-week period, the very end of June with final payroll to the apportionment for P2 that comes in the beginning of July. Ending fund balance for 13-14, strong ending fund balance. It's very similar to what we brought to you at the first interim report. You have a total fund balance of about $10.5 million, and you see how it's broken down. The restricted side is legally restricted. We can't do anything with it other than what it was identified for when we received the funding. You have some reserve. You have we have another commitment this time, and I talked to Kylie about it, and I'm not going to remember exactly what the other commitment was for. It's rollover EPA from 12-13, which is another reason why the EPA account is giving us fits, because it doesn't cycle through in one fiscal year. And then you have your reserve for deferred maintenance, reserve for economic uncertainty, which is the fund level reserve that the board has set up, and then the rest of it is undesignated, unappropriate. Multi-year projection in the LCFF model. I think the important thing to look at whenever I present this slide to you is you will hear that schools are going to get a funding increase next year of 28%. And that's true when they say that they're going to fund the gap at 28%. So you'll see in this model for next year, the funding gap for 14-15 is 28%, and for 15-16 it's 33%. That equates to a 12% and a 10% increase in funding from this year to next year, not 28%, because they're funding the gap. It's not 28% of our funding, it's 28% of the funding gap. So in the current model, we're looking at about a $5.6 million increase in funding and a $5.4 million increase in funding. And that's if we use the Department of Finance's numbers. Our multi-year projection continues to just have just a little bit more conservative approach to it. Instead of using 12 and 10%, we use 6 and 5. It's above COLA. It does produce, a fund balance that is positive. And as we continue to work and see what happens with the January budget proposal and how that works through the legislature and what they actually do with the funding for next year, then we'll make adjustments to this, and you'll see this in budget development as far as where we think 14-15, 15-16, and then 16-17 take us. But right now the multi-year projection is strong. It's very nice to see that the unrestricted general fund has a projected surplus in the first year out. I want to think that that is, I think, the first time we have had that in quite a long time. We've always ended up with that surplus in the second year, but to have the surplus starting with next year is very positive for us. And your components of ending fund balance are consistent with what you have done up to this point, with an increase in the deferred maintenance reserve every year of $250,000. The 13-14 budget cycle, I show you the next steps process every time. We've completed the first 3 of them. Usually you would have that monitoring of attendance for another month or so, but we went ahead and pushed that number through because we're very comfortable with it. We'll continue to monitor our cash, and then we'll continue the joint development of the local control accountability plan with Bill and his group and others that had been involved in the conversation. Our nest egg that's coming up, it's our little golden egg. So we hope it continues to be positive. And so I'll take any questions that you have at this point.
Is it positive being the golden egg?
I'm hoping.
It's a platinum.
Go ahead, Linda, if you want to just push Scott out of the way.
One of them. I'll just leave my stuff there.
Yeah, that's good. I like all the money on the pictures and the golden egg. I just thought from a WTA standpoint. No, I just wanted to ask a question regarding any update on the deferral reimbursements. If the district or this, where's the state on deferral? Because that's important. That's a lot of money.
Deferrals are cash flow only. So they did make some changes in the 13-14 budget. They took care of a good majority of them, but we still have the most significant deferral, which is the P2 principal apportionment deferral from June to July. That's the one that crosses fiscal years, and that's the one that hurts us the most. The EPA account is the one where the deferrals are going through the fiscal year. You know, when they first started, they said, well, schools aren't open in July and August, they don't need any money. We give them their first allotment of money in September because they're not even functioning. That EPA money is supposed to hit by June 30th, and it's the account that's giving us some fits with cash. But deferrals are what we brought to the beginning of the year in the 13-14 budget. 14-15, I do not think that they were going to buy down the P2 deferral. But if they did, it would not happen till next June, not this June.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Kirby Gonzalez? No?
No, thank you.
I'd just like to say thanks, Scott, too. That's a good job on that, and I always feel, even though you did 13 slides, you do a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for informing us. I know it's one of the things we have to do, part of our job up here, but I always appreciate you giving us all that information, and we can see it on a regular manner, I guess, so we can kind of see it how it goes throughout the year. And it's always helpful for us going forward and knowing what we can and can't do, and the things we want to do and the things we can do. So I appreciate it. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And if you're going to stay there for a second, I need a motion. I'll motion to approve the second interim fiscal report for fiscal 2013-2014. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those 3 ayes and no nos, and we'll move right. Are you going to stay for the second one?
Oh, no, Kylie's going to come up. This is hers.
Oh, this is it. New person coming up.
Hello.
Hello.
So Scott just got approval on the second interim, and part of the second interim is the budget transfers that we have to do to complete the report. I would like to get your approval so we can move the working budget to the revised. In doing so, we have the county office do that for us.
Excellent. Then I'll make a motion to approve the second interim 2013-2014 budget transfers.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those are 3 ayes and no nos, and the motion carries. Which brings us to consent items. With the consent, I have one modification that is here with the audience members for classified personnel. So if I can get a motion to approve consent items with the modified page.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 ayes and no nos, which motion carries for consent items. We're on to future board agenda items. Expand and implement VAPA, which is the 410 meeting. Anti-bullying update was also the 410 meeting. Also, we have a couple others, but we will also do the foster youth that was supposed to be, except for a hiccup on our part to not put it onto the agenda. So we will do that next month, I hope. And that's it. Do we have any other items?
I was actually at the Capitol today with Senator Wolk and Senator John Laird, and Senator John Laird brought up mental health funding, and curious as to how our district spent our allocation on mental health. I don't know, I'm sure you can't answer that right now, but I'd like to get some kind of report on that.
Okay, I'll work with you to find out what we're looking for, and then we'll get that out to board members.
Certain legislation piece,
Sure.
I can get you that number.
Okay, excellent. And that brings us to the best word, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
And all those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3 ayes and no nos, so thank you guys.